Welcome into season 2 of Total Hockey Now, formerly Better Hockey Now. More on that in a minute here on the Total Hockey Network YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter pages. I am Adam Bernard, and as always, my line mates, as usual, Mr. at Ant Rivera 86, Anthony Rivera, and at Fuzzy Chris 91, Christopher Morais. Boys, we've been off for about 5 weeks here. Good to see your faces again. And hey, it's trade deadline week. What better way to come back?
As that all too famous song goes, the boys are back in town. And
Yes.
We are here and ready to roll, and we're live. And that's all that matters to me. Great to be with you guys again. Great to see your faces. Ready to talk hockey, ready to talk trade deadline. Let's go.
I did not dress up as nice as Anthony for this. I feel like he went out here, the tie-dye, the hat, and everything. It is perfect timing. Yes, the NHL trade deadline is here. So we can watch some general managers make some good and some poor decisions. I'm excited to see some poor decisions being made, by a couple of the usual suspects.
And with the deadline being on a Friday, 3 o'clock Eastern time, for those teams, fans of teams that are in the Eastern time zone that are not happy with what they do, they can get an early start on their weekend drinking. And that may happen with some fan bases. We'll see. And don't forget, before we get to all that, just some housekeeping to take care of. Of course, rate, review, subscribe here on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter, or Facebook. Hit us up on all of those. Also, we do have a new home, and we do need to acknowledge our time at Better Sports Network and Fantasy Alarm. You can still see Christopher's great written content over there at fantasyalarm.com. Without BSN and FA, we would not have gotten the start, so we thank them for their time. But much like guys that move out of their parents' house and then share an apartment for the first time, that's what I'm kind of viewing the three of us as doing this year on Total Hockey Now. So when it comes to, we are on a new home now, and, we do have a new corporate structure, and we do just want to show who our new bosses are. So here we go. You're familiar with Milo, our executive producer on the right there. You've heard him in the background, and Cheech, who's our chairman and CEO. Ferdinand's our security director. That's my dog. And then on the left, you got Phoenix, the technical director, Chili, the production director and director of all things lizardry, and Melee, who's our CFO and sales director. So those are our new bosses here. Now that we have a new home.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I mean, Milo does definitely control everything that happens here, right? He is a regular guest, whether I want him to be or not. So yeah, glad to see he's getting a role. It's good because his dog food is expensive, and I've been asking him to contribute to some of the household chores, but he has decided his favorite activity is to sleep. He does enjoy watching hockey, though. I will say this, and a lot of people think it's because of me. I have nothing to do with this. He is just very interested by the little black dot on the TV that moves. So when he does find it, he is very focused on it. So I enjoy that.
But it is tiring, and hence why you sleep so much. So, you got to balance it out, right?
It's exhausting doing nothing all day and chasing and defending the backyard from squirrels, birds, and any other, animal that could possibly be there.
Well, he puts in a hard day work here. He deserves in a hard day work there. So he does a good job on both sides of it. Now, somebody who apparently wasn't doing a good enough job before we get to the trade deadline stuff is the New Jersey Devils. Yesterday, relieving Lindy Ruff of his duties. I always love that phrase. He got axed. Travis Green takes over as interim head coach. He had, I believe 4.5 seasons behind the Vancouver bench running things there. So our resident Devils fan here, Ant Rivera here, tell me, what was your initial reaction? Because to me, the thing I'm hearing from a lot of Devils fans is that it was, a little too late for this.
No, I totally agree with that assessment. It kind of is too little, too late right now. But it actually had to be done because you can't go out on the West Coast, lose to Anaheim and the Kings in the fashion that you did with the chance to be, 3 points out of a playoff spot. And now that is completely dissolved. This team has struggled in their last 10. They're 4-6. It's been the same story all season. It doesn't matter if we were on Better Hockey Now or that we're on Total Hockey Now. The team has played the same. No defense, terrible goaltending, And there needed to be some type of change because we don't even know if a trade's on their way. I mean, Fitzgerald talked about not mortgaging the future for a goaltender, but if that's not going to happen, something has to happen. And the fact that they axed Lindsey Ruff had to happen. It just had to happen.
You could see their position for the wild card there. They currently trail 8 points from the Tampa Bay Lightning, although they do have 2 games in hand. And we'll talk, I don't know if the coaching change has any direction on what they were going to do at the deadline. And a guy that we were going to talk about in the trade deadline preview, there was also some news that Tyler Toffoli, the guy that was being bandied about as a potential trade target, he's not going anywhere now. He's staying in Newark.
Yeah, he is. Fitzgerald mentioned it in the press conference this morning that they are not trading Tyler Toffoli. Actually, they're working on a contract extension. They're not on the same page yet in terms of money, but there is the contract extension talk, and he's pretty much earned it the way he's played all season long. He is not the problem of what's going on in New Jersey. It's another, I would say, free agent signing that they made last year after, trading for him. That was the issue for most of this season. But like I said, the Devils need goaltending and the Devils need defense because what's going on right now is not working. They have underperformed and they lose in some abysmal ways. So if they have any chance to try to get back into this playoff hunt, the move has to be now. They moved on to Lindsey Ruff, and then by Friday, there's going to have to be some defense and there's going to have to be a goaltender here if they have any chance of making the play. I mean, we talked about it all off season, right? Even from last playoffs, this team needs a goalie and they've done nothing about it. So we'll see what happens on Friday.
I mean, look, obviously the Devils need something to change, and they feel like coaching is the way to go. I guess so. I don't know. Like the Devils have underperformed. They just haven't been very good. And less like Lindy Ruff was given a contract extension less than a year ago. So like obviously something has changed. I think that if you make this move now, it's because you believe that you can make the playoffs, or at least that's the understanding. So I expect the Devils to go into the deadline and acquire players to make them better, because you don't like we've seen teams fire their coach and then win the Stanley Cup. I'm not saying the Devils are anywhere near there, but they're in the position where they need to do something. And I understand Fitzgerald saying we're not going to mortgage the future, but like you got to work, like the present is here, by the way. You don't go out and sign Timo Meier, and you have Hughes and you have Brad and you have Heischer and you have all these guys that are in there, like they're getting there. They're in their prime, I would say. You go out, you get to fully, you don't do all these. The future is now. Like you got to do what you got to do now. You had a chance to really extend your season last year. That didn't happen, and now you've regressed. So I know some teams don't want to mortgage that future. This isn't a team that's on the cusp of making the playoffs or on the cusp of being competitive. They are competitive. They should be competitive. They have not done a good job. So like obviously don't mortgage something for a bottom tier or a mid-tier fourth defenseman. Don't do that. But they need a goalie. So go out and get the best one that you can get. Show up to Calgary and say, hey, man, what do you want? And let's keep it reasonable and we'll make it happen. But I mean, I think that they are a team that can compete. They have obviously made the moves and they want to. So now it's like everybody's got to get on board here, because like now that you fired Lindy, like who's left after that, right? Like, you can't trade every player. So,
And they talked about, for so long it was trust the process. And this was after making the playoffs a few years back, and then just basically bottom feeding for the next couple of years after they, had Taylor Hall. And, how much longer can you trust the process? It's like you said, it's time now. You got all-stars in Jack Hughes. I mean, you got the captain and Nico Heischer. You got Dougie Hamilton. Well, Dougie Hamilton's hurt right now.
That's been a big problem for them. Is no Dougie Hamilton. They've missed him sorely. Yeah. But that's not the only. It's not. Oh, you put Hamilton back in the lineup, and they're a top team in the division. They need more than that. But that is a big loss for them this year.
Yeah. And they have the pieces. They have the pieces. They just needed goaltending, and we all knew this. we all knew that they needed goaltending, and they thought that by letting Damon Severson go and Ryan Graves, that the kids and Simon Nemec and Luke Hughes would immediately impact the team, and they have in some ways, but they are not there to lead this defense. I mean, they're still learning while playing this game, and without Dougie Hamilton, like, your veteran presence and leadership on the defense is kind of non-existent. So there needs to be like a veteran presence on the defense there, and like we said, goaltending, 100%.
Well, let's segue right into, let's talk some goalies here that could be moved at the deadline. A few moves that have already happened that just worth mentioning before we get into, the Devils and the Jacob Markstrom saga in Calgary. Winnipeg added Shane Monahan for a 2024 first and a conditional 2027 third. Montreal receiving those. Vancouver added Elias Lindholm. Calgary gets Andrei Kuzmenko, 2 defensemen, a 2024 first and a conditional 2024 fourth round pick. Dallas, certainly shoring up their blue line and making it one of the best in the league, adding Chris Tanev. Calgary getting a 2024 second, conditional 2026 third, and prospect Artem Grushnikov. And then Toronto added Ilya Lyubushkin, who then got hurt, but he should be back soon. 75% of his salary being retained by the Ducks and the Hurricanes. Anaheim gets Toronto's 2025 third pick. Carolina gets Toronto's 2024 sixth round pick there. So there you go. Those are some of the moves that have happened already. Now back to the goaltending. Jacob Markstrom in Calgary. We've been told that the Devils and the Flames were close, and then nothing happened. Markstrom on Mika Kiprasov night decided to say he wasn't happy about being approached about being traded, and then having the carpet yanked out and saying, no, we're not going to trade him. Either way, Markstrom has a 21-15-2 record, 914 save percentage. And he is, if you want to think the Bruins are going to deal Linus Ullmark at the deadline, fine, then maybe he's the top goalie out there. I think that's more of an offseason thing. Markstrom is the top goalie out there. It's a question of whether Calgary is actually going to make him available, or if they meant what they said and no, we're going to hold on to him.
I don't know what the Calgary Flames are doing. Like, I don't know if they're buyers. I don't know if they're sellers. I don't know if they're real. I don't know if they're fake. Like, they are the definition of the question is a hot dog, a sandwich, and nobody really has an answer to them, because why would we know? Like, for a minute they're competitive, and then a minute they're not. And if you want it, you move on from Tanev, you move on from Hanifin, and then you're going to be well, I'm going to keep Jacob Markstrom, but I also have Wolf, who could be the next guy who could kind of show up and see what we got. So what are we doing here, Calgary? What's going on? Are we just going to be a mid-tier team again for the better part of a decade? So if you're going to tear it down, right? Tear it down, go out, get your picks, get your players, and rebuild if you want. Or you're going to go out there and you're going to build a competitive team. But I don't think they are. I think they're closer to the rebuild than they are to the competitiveness, right? They've lost a lot of key players through, again, no fault of their own. I mean, if you don't want to be in Calgary, you don't want to be in Calgary, and they turned it into something that was decent. But now we got to decide what they want to do. And I still don't know what they want to do.
And you make a good point there, because we'll talk about Noah Hanifin later, but he's going to get dealt. It would be a huge shock if he does not get traded. So if you, like you said, if you're going to start parting off the team, why would you stop at a goalie in a thin goaltender market where you can get, I'm not going to say a king's ransom for him, but you're going to get a nice amount. You have a team like the Devils who are ready to probably pull the trigger on a deal. You might even be able to squeeze them for a little bit more now too, if you want. I just don't get it.
Maybe the issue is kind of like with Winnipeg dealt with last season, where, they backed into the playoffs and it was enough to kind of keep their 2 top players and re-sign them. Maybe that's what they're hoping for. I mean, they're only 7 points out of the final 2 spots, because both the Kings and Nashville have 72. Calgary has 65. The only team that's above them is St. Louis at 67. So maybe they're hoping that they can go on some run, and maybe it's a lot harder to get a really good goaltender, right? And maybe they think if they can keep the goaltender, they can replace in other ways, whether it's on defense, whether it's on offense. So maybe that's their whole point. I mean, every week it changes for them, right? The week before they're out of it, so they want to trade. this week they're, only a couple points back, and then they're back in it. So like they can't even make up their mind of what they're doing. And it's not going to end well for them if they don't, stick to a plan here. And like Adam said, I would, if I'm them, you got to trade him and get the most that you can for him. And I think he does he have a year left as well?
He's got two years left, Jacob Markstrom.
Oh, so
a very team-friendly deal too. So
you get a killing for that.
If he doesn't, so Jersey's been the popular link. Maybe Calgary keeps him. Other teams that could consider him, or and depending upon cap gymnastics and stuff like that. I know LA is pretty handcuffed, but man, could they use a guy like Markstrom to really shore up their problems? But I don't think they have anything that they can really. I don't know if they'd be able to make it work. I don't know.
Do you help them? Do you help the Kings, who are 7 points ahead of you?
I think. I mean, I know there's the whole same division thing, but I mean, and we could do a whole episode on the Western wild card picture. But when you look at those standings and in the West, like, and I sent it, and we sent a tweet from the account about this last night. Are we just assuming that the Kings and the Predators are the wild card team? Whoever finishes the fourth in the Pacific and the Predators, we'll say, because Calgary should be selling off, Minnesota should be selling off, and everybody below them is selling off. Seattle, I don't know what they are. They're a plucky team. But, Wenberg is already sat, so we kind of have an indication of where they're leaning. St. Louis is a team, but St. Louis might trade Buchnevich. So, like, is by default. I mean, is somebody going to really go for it? I don't know. So we'll see what the direction of some of those teams are here, and we'll talk about them. Philly's another team that can maybe look at, if they wanted to make a big move, but I don't know if they want to do that now. The other goalie that I wanted to talk about here is Jake Allen. Not a great record, not great stats. Obviously, Chris can tell you all about playing behind Montreal, what it'll do to your numbers there. So if this is interesting, because this is a situation where if Markstrom does get dealt and you missed out on him, okay, Jake Allen's a silver medal. If Markstrom doesn't get dealt, if Calgary says, screw it, we're just going to hang on to him and see what happens, can Montreal really just go out and really screw somebody or get like max value for a Jake Allen?
I cannot picture a scenario where a sober general manager looks at Jake Allen and says, yeah, I'll give you something meaningful for him. Like, the Montreal Canadiens have had 3 goalies now for the entire season. I can't imagine, like, at some point, this is like, everybody understands the 3-headed monster in net is not ideal. And Montreal has done this for longer than they should have. So I can't imagine the price on Jake Allen was very, very good at any point. And maybe Ken Hughes is just asking for too much, and it's just not there. I don't know if you want to go the whole season with this and then, maybe deal with it in the off season or something like that. But that feels like there's just not enough games to go around for goalies. Like, either if you don't want to lose Primo, fine. But then you got to understand that, I don't know, like, take something for something at this point. I mean, I would take 2 steamed hot dogs and put in a Labatt 5 out for, like, Jake Allen at this point. He's not moving the needle. And the more that he plays, I don't think he's going to get it. Like, I don't think his value is going up the more that he plays. It's kind of a thing where, like, if you can shelter him, you can kind of sell somebody the idea of something. But the more that he plays on a, not that great hockey, like, how much is he really going to improve another team? Like, how much is he going to go out there and do it? Can you squeeze a second round pick out of somebody and retain a little bit of money? I don't know. I would not, but I mean, we'll see.
think Allen's more of like a back. Like, if you're looking to shore up your backup situation, you're not really sure of that. At least you got a guy that's been through the playoffs before. But and another name I want to throw out there too. Anthony's got the Ducks hat on, and this is probably more like an off-season thing at the draft kind of situation. But John Gibson, if you're Anaheim, and you find out that, hey, Markstrom's just not going to be dealt, you just have to like jump on it now and try and get some team that's like anxious to spend a high capital on a goalie and improve it. Like, you do that right then and there.
I think so. I mean, at least try, right? It doesn't hurt to try and get the most value you can. If the Devils are not going to, give up Alexander Holt in a trade to get a franchise goalie, I don't know if any of these teams are going to make a move to pick up a Jake Allen or John Gibson and give up, the necessary, requirement that these teams want. I don't think it's going to happen. If they're being sticklers about Jacob Markstrom, maybe nothing happens with Jake Allen, John Gibson, but it doesn't hurt for the teams that have them to try and see what you can get from everyone else and see if you could screw another team over.
I can't see a team biting on John Gibson at this point. He still has 3 years at $6.4 million after this year. So that's a lot of money tied up in a goalie that kind of hasn't been very good through no fault of his own. He's on a really bad hockey team. So I don't know if somebody wants to pay the capital to do, like, if you're willing to take on the entire contract, maybe you tell the Ducks, say, hey, I'm not asking you to retain any money. I'll deal with that, but this is as much as I'll give you for him. And then you can say, okay, well, we free up the cap space, and we know teams enjoy having the free cap space. We know that Anaheim is not a large market, so if they can move on from a contract where they don't have to pay, fine. Maybe Lucas Dostal is there. They can find a serviceable backup. Like, this is not a team that's in any position to win right now. So if maybe they can move on from some money, sure, but there's not that many teams that are competitive that have a ton of cap space. So it's kind of like you're stuck, but in a spot where you can't do much about him. I think this is more of an off-season deal where teams try to figure out how the money's going to go around and how they're going to make it work. But man, I mean, I'm not lining up. Like, after Jacob Markstrom, I'm not lining up for a goalie and saying, hey, I absolutely need one of these guys that are left. It doesn't make sense. I don't think they'll move the needle, and I can get somebody that is, much more at a discount that'll do a good enough job.
All right, so there's some of the goalie. Now, another goalie that could be thrown out there is Capo Kakkonen, but they get from San Jose, but that's a late round pick. If you're desperate to just shore up your goaltending, but there's not a lot out there. Marc-Andre Fleury got taken off the market pretty early. They said they're not going to move him. That would have been a nice little story there if he was a guy that was on the move, but not going to be the case. So let's talk a little forwards now. And the big name out there is Jake Guentzel. Hasn't played since Valentine's Day, but he should be able to return sometime next week. 29 years old, 22 goals and 52 points in the 50 games he has played this season. He's arguably the top prize out there among the skaters, if you don't want to say Noah Hanifin. Teams that have been linked to Guentzel: Vegas, Vancouver, Florida, Edmonton, Carolina. And before we talk about the targets, let's talk about how Pittsburgh could just be huge sellers here with Guentzel, Riley Smith. Is anybody say? I mean, people are starting to throw out Sidney Crosby to Colorado stuff, which is ludicrous, but but going a little crazy with the point. But weird to see Pittsburgh being sellers, like, after what we expected, or at least what I expected coming into the year.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely had them kind of floating around that final spot, possibly making that final spot in the playoffs, but it doesn't look like that's going to be happening at all. I doubt Sidney Crosby gets traded, or I don't even know why that thought went through some people's heads, but everybody else should probably be, up there for, trades to be made. This is an opportunity for the Penguins to take the year off, retool, and get themselves back into playoff contention like they've been for most of the last decade and a half. They can do that here if they put a lot of their players up for the trade deadline.
They've been pretty bad. I mean, the problem with the Pittsburgh Penguins is their best players have not been bad. They've been as advertised, right? And let's not forget, they're not 24 anymore, these guys. Some of them are, older, and they're still producing. They're still giving you, quality. I mean, knock on wood here, Evgeny Malkin hasn't gotten hurt, and neither is Chris Letang. So we've gotten a lot out of them, and the Penguins have as well. The supporting cast there is just so bad. Like, nobody else is there. Nobody can come up and give them enough. They don't score goals. They're terrible on the power play. So I understand the idea to move Jake Guentzel because he's on an expiring deal. And a lot of the talk is that he's just he's going to be a pure rental. And I mean, if I'm Pittsburgh and I have, and I can acquire an asset for him, then sure, get what you can here. I think it would be wild to watch him play in Vancouver. The Vancouver Canucks are already a pretty high scoring team. I think they need a little bit more depth on the wing there. It's not guys like Connor Garland and Ilya Mikheyev that are going to do it for you. So I think adding Jake Guentzel there, who can score goals, who can finish, give, Brock Besser a little bit of help as well. Getting passes from Quinn Hughes probably doesn't hurt either. So where the Vancouver Canucks are situated, where they, what they're pushing for here, as good as they've been this year, I think that's a great ad. I mean, Vegas can do whatever they want here. The Markstrom injury in the spring has showed up, so there's some cap space they need. Florida can always use another great player. That probably won't hurt them. Edmonton, I just don't see money working. The Edmonton Oilers would need Pittsburgh to kind of retain some money, which I don't know if they're willing to do. And the Carolina Hurricanes, I don't know. It's not as exciting. I want to see him go somewhere exciting. Like, I'd like to see him play in Colorado. Like, if Colorado could swing some money to do that, like, I wouldn't mind watching, like, having a first line, a top power play unit of like Guentzel, of like McKinnon, Rantanen, Nikushin, and Cale Makar. Like, that would be kind of fun.
Yeah, for sure.
That's what I'm here for. Some fun.
Next forward I want to get to, with Guentzel, and is there a possibility that he goes back to Pittsburgh? Because I know he loves the area. So, like, if it's a pure rental, they're looking to bring him back maybe, and I don't know. But you said Vancouver would be an interesting one. I think Florida at some point is going to have to Florida has to make a big move, I think, at the deadline here. And that would be one way to go about it, would be getting Guentzel. Another winger let's talk about here. We got two guys in Anaheim I want to talk about. The other big winger available is Frank Vatrano. Fast skater that shoots the puck, can complement any top nine line that has a hole on the wing looking for some punch. 29 goals, 19 assists, 191 shots. Apparently the asking price on Vatrano going to be pretty high. Links there include the Rangers, Red Wings, Islanders, Avalanche, Hurricanes, Oils, Predators, and Lightning, although I think the Lightning are to use their assets on Hanifin. And then the other guy is Adam Henrique. Let's talk about the Ducks as a pair here. Thin center market, 42 points, 18 goals in 59 games, wins faceoff, kills penalties, does the things every playoff team needs to help make a run. Rangers also linked to Henrique, although I think that's cooling off a little bit. Bruins, Avalanche, Panthers, Devils. With the Rangers, let's talk about that for a second. They need help at center with Hedl once the season was over. They need help at wing. We know that. But once, I'm not saying they need help on the blue line. Everybody could use some on the blue line, but that's not going to be one of their main focuses. It's probably a depth addition if they do anything there. I think the Rangers are going to go hard for a wing, and then they're going to kind of maybe not go for the top center like a Henrique. They're going to go for more of a depth center because they really have a couple of top centers already. You don't really need, like, as great as Henrique would have. I think you should spend more of the asset on improving the wing than improving down the middle in the Rangers case.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think Frank Vatrano is going to be the real one that a lot of teams dip their toes in because he still has a year left on his deal, right? Mm-hmm. And it's very affordable. So, and if he goes, anywhere but Anaheim is an upgrade, with the exception of San Jose and Chicago. So anywhere he goes, you're going to play him in a top 6 role, I hope. And he's going to, he's a big body. He's a guy who goes to the net. He can play. He can shoot. Like, it's all those things that you love in a player, all those key words on the bingo card that coaches love. So he can give you that. So I think some teams will line up, yes, for Jake Guentzel just because he is that good. But I think the main focus for a lot of those like teams that maybe don't have the cap space to do it, maybe don't want to pay an extra piece, a draft pick or something to help, so that the Penguins retain some salary to make it work. I think a lot of teams might go into the Frank Vatrano kind of sweepstakes here. And that's where I think Anaheim can get the most out of it. Adam Henrique, I think, is a depth player. He'll, he gives you what he can at this point, third line guy. But Frank Vatrano is the player I think a lot of teams are going to touch base on and see how they can add him to their lineup. And that would be a wise thing to do.
Yeah, that's great for Anaheim. You got a lot of teams on the kind of the bubble right now. You look at the Red Wings, you look at the Islanders, the Predators and the Lightning could use some offense, and especially the Islanders can use a little bit of offense there. But I don't know where they go with that trade, but they do have the assets to make some moves here and restock, retool.
Speaking of the Islanders, Lou Lamoriello said today that they will not be subtracting from their current roster to make any sort of improvements. He's not somebody that really goes out and makes a big splash unless he thinks they're close, and I don't think he thinks the Islanders are that close. So I could see, Maybe they move a pick or a prospect to get somebody, but there's not going to be anybody coming off their current roster. And a guy that has been linked to potentially the Islanders is Vladimir Tarasenko. We thought Ottawa was ready to take that next step this season. Clearly, we're not. But Vladdy finds himself heading to a contender again at the trade deadline, like he did with the Blues and the Rangers last year. He's got 17 goals and 24 assists for the Senators in 57 games. Does have a no-trade clause, so he's going to have some say on where he goes here. Other links we've talked about besides the Islanders, Vegas, Panthers, Oilers, Hurricanes, Bruins, Rangers, the same teams we're all saying need some upgrades up front and are close enough to spend the money to get these kind of guys, or spend the capital to get these guys, I should say.
Well, question for you, Adam, because he was on the Rangers last year. He played with that roster. Is that, I know the coaching staff is different, but is that something that you revisit? Because obviously he wasn't exactly the best when he came over. Could have been worse. Could have been Kane, who was coming off the injury. But I mean, he didn't play terribly. And is this a guy that you would consider bringing back, considering that he knows the rest of the roster and has played with most of them?
We talked about how the Rangers need to upgrade on the wing, and Jake Guentzel is going to cost too much for them. I don't think, we'll talk about Pavel Buchnevich in a second. I don't think that's on the Rangers' radar either. I think the cost is too high there. I think you kick the tires on Vetrano, you start seeing what they're asking, and if it sounds like it's like, nope, this is going to be too high, immediately go and get, Tarasenko, I think, is like the silver medal in that regard from Vetrano, or the bronze if you want to include Guentzel. But like I said, the Rangers, I don't think are in the Guentzel sweepstakes at this point. But you got to move quickly, because he's the top 3 winger available. So you need it. Like I said, talk to the Ducks. They've clearly been having conversations, and I think if he's putting up 41 points in 57 games for Ottawa, with that team just having nothing really to play for all year and just being awful, him going in and playing a top 6 role, if you want to slide him, let's see here, you bring up the Rangers line combinations. If you want to put him on the top line instead of Kakko, I don't think you're going to really mess with Trocheck, Panarin, and Laffy at this point. So, we'll see. And, whether they trade Kakko or not, I don't know, because there are fans out there that are like, look what happened to Buchnevich, blah, 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 be patient. You got to give something to get something. We'll see what happens there. But yeah, I would say Vetrano first, Tarasenko second.
I think Tarasenko ends up in Edmonton. He's got all the makings of everything that that Edmonton's looking for, right? An older player. He has some playoff experience. He's won a Stanley Cup. I mean, Ottawa will gladly retain some money for him to be wherever else he needs to be, and they'll take an asset for him. And, Edmonton needs some help on the wing here, because, yes, it's not ideal to have McDavid and Draisaitl on the same line. I think what they want to do is move Draisaitl down to that second line, give them some depth, because right now that top line is smashing, because Zach Hyman scores every goal from inside of 32 centimeters from wherever the blue paint is. That's what he's looking for. But they still need some depth. They still need some guys around it. It's not Matthias Janmark who's going to do it. I mean, Corey Perry is a 4th line guy. He was, that's the role that he can play in the playoffs. You can move him up on the 3rd, second power play unit if you want, but it's not Corey Perry is moving the needle for me. It's not Warren Fogle, that's for sure. I mean, Connor Brown and I have the same amount of goals this season in the NHL. So I think they need some support here. And Tarasenko is a guy who can give them that. That's not going to burn their pockets either. Just adding some quality there. I'm sure Edmonton's got a lot of things on the list that they need to do. Probably adding a defenseman is there. Every team needs, those depth defensemen, but I don't think you need to pay a crazy price to get one. But I mean, that seems like a good spot for Tarasenko. I mean, he's already playing in Ottawa, and that's not exciting. So he can't say that he doesn't like playing in Edmonton, because I mean, it's Edmonton in March, right? That's
Edmonton.
It's Edmonton in March, right?
Yeah.
Ask Chris Pronger and his wife what they think of Edmonton. So that there's, he can go there for a nice Stanley Cup run, put a nice ring on his finger. It's never a bad idea to play McDavid and Draisaitl. So sure, that's where I would want to go.
Now, so that's one Russian winger that's available. Another one, Pavel Buchnevich here. And you said Edmonton. And Edmonton and Buchnevich, it would be a good fit. I just don't think they are going to be able to get that kind of deal done. 24 goals, 24 assists, 58 games. He's been St. Louis top scorer, well-rounded player. Another thing you could see, they dealt a Russian winger last year, St. Louis to Vegas, and Ivan Barbashev. could Vegas come back to the well and maybe, if they don't get Guentzel or if they don't look at Toronto, maybe the Buchnevich is the way they can go as well.
Yeah, Buchnevich has the thing with Buchnevich, he has an extra year on his deal at 5.8. So if you're taking him again, it's not a rental situation. You get him for one more year. He's been very productive too. He's not terrible. He is, I think, he's not the same player that Frank Vetrano is. And Vetrano's got a really nice team deal, but Buchnevich is not a poor ad by any means. He's doing a lot of good things on let's face it, the St. Louis Blues are an average hockey team at best there. So I think he can step into a situation, make things happen. Again, I assume the Blues want at least a first round pick and a prospect. There are teams that have those picks that I'm sure will be more than happy to move them. Again, I would like to see him end up in Colorado just because I enjoy fun. That may not happen per se. There needs to be a team that can take on some money. I don't know how many teams want to take on, splitting the cap for Buchnevich for next year as well. But I do expect him to have a different address come Friday, 3 p.m.
Team I wanted to throw out there for Buch. If you're the Blackhawks and you're rebuilding, at some point you got to start putting some pieces around Bedard. Is that somebody you look at? He's 29. He's got a year left, like you said. Maybe you could get him to extend in Chicago. Or if you're Chicago, you're not even looking at that right now, and you're just acquiring.
You'd have to pay an asset you don't want to pay. Like, I'm not sure you can move a pick, and it could be a first with every single condition written down on it. But I can't imagine Chicago doing anything that makes sense unless it's just getting rid of a player they don't need. That's it. This roster could probably not be stripped down anymore, and they're going to do it. So I'm excited to see how that happens. I'm excited to see basically their AHL team in the NHL.
It's how bare bones can you strip us down to? We're going to see how bare the bone can be.
It's about to be as clean as a bone that I give Milo here. It's going to be there's not going to be an ounce of meat left on it. We're going to have to hockey DB some of these names to find out where they're from.
I mean, it might get down to the point where it's almost even like a boneless wing or a bone never even existed. But nonetheless, here we go. I had Tyler Toffoli on the list, but like we talked about earlier, he's a guy that's going to be staying in New Jersey. He's going to be, he's going to be part of their future. I would think you like the move, Anthony, right? I mean, he's been one of the only guys you acquired that has been actually producing on a consistent basis. You know what you're getting from him. He's a good fit. He's never been a bad fit wherever he went. I mean, he's as safe as bet as anybody.
No, yeah, I am not taking away from the little bit of success that has come through for the Devils this season, and he has been a great offensive force for them, and he's definitely not one that I would trade unless you were telling me that this team was giving up here and was looking to get, multiple assets, because they could trade Toffoli and get a good deal out of this. But if you're looking to continue your ascent and try to make the playoffs, not only this year, but in the future, you got to start building at some point. You can't just keep, rebuilding and rebuilding. So, bring Toffoli in, maybe a year of Timo Meier having, all the frustrations that he has. Maybe he can, overcome that into next season. You got a healthy Dougie Hamilton, you got Jack and Nico. Maybe this is a team, like we said, a goalie away, a defenseman who we're going to get into, who's one of the defensemen that I would be looking at. Maybe this team can pull something off here.
I don't think they should keep Tyler Toffoli. I think they should move him. He has 1 year left on his deal. No, he's a pending UFA, right? New Jersey can score goals. I don't think that's the problem in New Jersey. I think they can't defend as well as they want to, and they need a goalie. So if I can liquidate some money out of Tyler Toffoli, right, and he has a value to somebody else, right? Because don't forget, the Devils have Alexander Haas, they have Dawson Mercer, they have guys who have just, the step hasn't been there yet for these kids. They haven't, progressed in the way that I think a lot of people thought that they could. The Devils have enough depth up front to be good. And let's not forget, Nico Hischier was hurt, 3 different times. Jack Hughes missed some times. Dougie Hamilton. I know every team deals with injuries, but when you're losing your superstars, it's obviously tough. I think adding a goalie, yes, is important, but also if you're moving to Foley money out and you can go out and get maybe a couple of solid defensemen to come in and really stabilize. I know you had them. I mean, look at the Pittsburgh Penguins and what happens, right, with Ryan Graves. Look at Damian Severson and stuff like that. Those players, they make a difference on Stanley Cup winning teams. So if you can go out and acquire those quality guys who play defense and are out there to defend, then maybe you'll be just fine. But you gotta be willing to go out and patch the holes and have to sacrifice a little bit. So maybe Fitzgerald on the outside says, hey, I'm not looking to trade him. But that doesn't mean he's not getting a call about him. And if he is getting a call, I will at least listen and say, okay, well, if I'm willing to do this, it's because I'm doing something else. I don't believe for too long that he should not be mortgaging the future. Like I said earlier, like we're here, man. Like let's do something. Let's have a little bit of fun, not, make it to the second round and then miss the playoffs the next year. That just doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean, like in the Metropolitan too. I mean, we know the Rangers and the Hurricanes. Those are going to be the top two teams when it's all said and done. And Philly's kind of has retained their hold on that 3 spot for a while, but it's not totally unattainable if you're in the Islanders, Devils of the world. Do I dare say the Capitals? I can't put them in that mix.
The Capitals are there. The Flyers are there. The Islanders. You're telling me New Jersey is not better than all of those teams? Like you can make the run if you want. Just do it.
Yeah, I
easier
agree.
said than done, right? But
it's easier said than done. Yeah, I mean, and if it's not this year, fine. Then make the moves towards next year. But then, next year is the year. Now let's talk some defensemen here before we get to sweater weather and our wrap up episode 1, season 2 of Total Hockey Now here on our Total Hockey Now YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook pages. Noah Hanifin, who you could argue is probably the biggest prize of the deadline. Going to get probably a lot for Calgary here. And he's got 11 goals and 35 points total this season. Can also play a lot of minutes as a team's top pairing blue liner. Seems like Tampa Bay and Calgary are very much in bed with one another on this. The Bruins also a team. Other teams you want to throw in the mix: the Panthers, the Kings, the Golden Knights. But I really do think it's going to come down to the Lightning or the Bruins here for Hanifin. Tampa definitely has a need on the blue line with no Sergachev there, so they have missed him sorely. And if they're going to make any sort of run in the playoffs, they need to have somebody like that back there. And if you're Boston, maybe you feel forced to make the move a little bit because A, they could use a little help on the blue line. B, you don't want to see Tampa getting Hanifin, and that's a team that you're probably going to face in the playoffs.
No, that's yes. Like I don't know how Hanifin doesn't end up in Tampa Bay. Like I have no idea unless Tampa Bay is like, and let's not forget, like Brisebois is very open to just trading like too many picks for a player, right? Like Tanner Jeannot came over and he basically said, here's one of each. And, Nashville was like, sure. Like, you have anything else you want to bring? Like, it was just like waking up and it was Christmas. So I think that would be there. The same thing for the Bruins. The Bruins are right there, but that Atlantic division is very, very competitive. And the way it's setting up is they are going to have a date with the Toronto Maple Leafs in the first round. And this is not the same. Like, I know they beat Toronto again yesterday, and they're
not the same Leafs.
It's sure the Leafs, I think, still have a level they can get to. I think the Bruins are like, there's a level that they can't attain anymore. Like, you don't have Patrice Bergeron, you don't have David Krejci, you don't have all these guys that have been around there who can shut down a whole bunch of players. So I think adding a top tier defenseman like Hanifin is good, can complement Charlie McAvoy in a lot of different ways. So I think it's there. Boston is more than willing to move a pick. I still don't know how that roster has been able to be this competitive up till now, but I mean, like, here we are kind of thing. You know what I mean? So.
But I mean, if anybody's done a good job, the best job of like being like a team that just band-aids it together and finds a way to forge ahead, it's Tampa. But you look at that blue line right now, and it's they still got Victor Hedman, of course. You still got whatchamacallit there. You got who's running the power play, but then and Hayden Fleury, but then and Eric Cernak, but Nick Perbix, Emil Martinson, Lilleberg, Darren Radish. I mean, there has to be some sort of upgrade there, and it's not a Joel Edmondson edition. You might need that too, but you got to go out and get Hanifin.
They
Now,
should have been on the Chris Tanev deal, but I guess that didn't work. I guess they couldn't get a 2-for-1 in Florida.
probably could not get the 2-for-1 in Florida, but then the other guy that's, we'll consider probably the silver medal or the consolation prize for Hanifin is Sean Walker. With the acquisition of Jamie Drysdale plus the presence of Travis Sanheim and Cam York, it makes Walker expendable. I know Nick Sealer's another blue liner they're talking about moving as well. Walker, 20 minutes of ice time a game, 22 points on the season. With Tanev off of the market, Philly's going to be able to get a little bit more juice out of the squeeze there for Walker. Same teams that are looking at whoever doesn't get Hanifin or who doesn't want to pay that price, they're going to be looking at Sean Walker, but he's not going to be coming cheap either.
No, Sean Walker, I think, is, again, one of those underrated defensemen that can help you win. There's a reason that the Flyers have been successful. And even, with them losing their top goalie, they're still hanging around. I think Torts has gotten the most out of his defensemen. His forwards have been good. I think they've been good. You've watched, Owen Tippett has been good. It helps having Sean Couturier in the lineup. That probably helps a lot as well. But they've gotten a lot out of their defensemen, and they've played really well. So I think that's worked them into a good position. I think they have to sell a little bit just because they can't retain everything, right? Or at least they don't sound like they want to. I don't think the Flyers should be sellers. I mean, if you're in a position and you think you can make it, you should. But like, are you for real or are you not? Like, maybe they feel that they are not for real without Carter Hart in net. So,
well, and that's why when I see the name Scott Lawton out there as a potential, trade cam, like if you feel like you're in the playoffs, why would you trade a guy like Scott Lawton? You need a guy like Scott Lawton in the playoffs to help. They'll grind out those bottom minutes. Now, because they have so many mobile defensemen, I could see why, okay, like you got almost too much there. You got to like try and turn that into something you can use up front. But yeah, I don't think it's going to, I think they're looking for something that they can use now as well as some sort of decent pick for him.
No, that's definitely fair. But again, I still believe strongly that Noah Hanifin ends up in Tampa Bay. So
yeah, agreed. I think
just book him the ticket now. Let him go pick it up when he gets to the airport in Calgary. Be like, hey, it's already done.
And then yeah, Sean Walker is the consolation prize there. Now we're talking about defensemen on the move. I don't think the Flyers would be in any position to try and help the Devils, but we have talked about the Devils' deficiencies on the blue line. If you can't get Markstrom, you can't get a goaltender, you can't make it work. You try and go out and maybe get a guy like Matt Dumba, or at least try and if you can't shore up the goalie, you try and shore up the line of defense before the goalie. I mean, he's had a much better year than he had the previous year.
Whatever is going to help, man. Honestly, I am out of answers for what I've seen from this team. It's the same thing.
Demoralized.
Defense, goaltending. Right now, we basically have almost neither. So, I mean, we give up the first goal every game. There's like 5 or 6 goals a game, and it's deflating for the team. They're always coming from behind as well. So it's not like they're shooting it out and, they're scoring more goals. They're on the opposite end of that spectrum, and it's unfortunate and it sucks. And yeah, if you could get defense in here and help out a guy like Nico Dawes, and I guess when Vanacek comes back, but I don't know. I'm out of answers, honestly. We've talked about it all season and nothing has been done about it. And the only thing that we have done is get rid of Lindy Ruff. And that might not have been the answer anyway. So we'll see.
Who is more needy right now, the Devils or Milo? It's 100% Milo. He is very concerned about the Devils situation here. And he just wants to. Here's what I'll say about Matt Dumba, and I think Milo will support me here. Is it like if the Devils are not adding a goalie, like what are we doing? Like, yes, you need everything else, but you need a goalie. Everything else after that is an option. So if your goaltending can't stop the puck, you can get as many world-class defensemen as you want. You can have a team full of elite defensemen. Pick whichever one you want, but like they need a goalie. So start there, and then like Matt Dumba's, you can find you can find Matt Dumba's everywhere. So like focus your resources on getting a goalie. I need a goalie. That's what like Fitzgerald should be. He should get about 3 hours of sleep in the next 3 days. He should be like, I want to see his cell phone bill at like 30,000 minutes of talk time, like in the next, I don't know, couple of days. Like, find a goalie, go out and do it.
A little bit of news here, not really news if you're really thinking about it, though. Jason Zucker has been scratched from the Coyotes game against the Blackhawks tonight for trade-related reasons. So, not a guy we discussed here today, but definitely a guy who's going to be, he's one of those guys where he helps no matter where you plug him in. Like, he's going to be a third-line guy, but he's definitely a guy, we saw what he did with the Penguins, and, he's another guy that's going to be out there. So, yeah, we're going to start seeing more of that here. This is Tuesday, March 5th. We're going to see that plenty, tonight, tomorrow, and definitely Thursday of guys being sat for trade-related reasons. Now, we've talked, where do we think guys are moving, and, everybody has their theories and whatever. The fun part is recapping it, and we're going to be doing that Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific time for my fellow West Coasters there. About an hour after the deadline settles, gives a few more minutes for those last-second trades to come in over the fax or however they're getting them nowadays. But, yeah, we're going to have a full recap for you here, and that'll be fun for you here on the Total Hockey Now YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook pages. Now, one thing that we would never stop is sweater weather. And this week, I decided to go mid-90s. I don't know why. Flames are going to be an active team. Blues are there. Who knows what they're going to do. Two teams that are right there next to each other in the standings. So we'll look at their mid-90s looks. You got a Theo Fleury there on the left, all-time great Flames player. With the the typical Flames look, but with that like cheesy 90s, like trying to be cool, awkward stripes there. Also kind of looks like the German flag a little bit is incorporated into the jersey. And then on the right, you got Mr. Brett Hull with the late 90s looks there where they have, the music staff lines there incorporated in, and they added red in as a color, which was not a color of theirs for a while. So going to the store, you got one jersey you can buy. Which one of these two is it going to be?
Even with that red added, I am going with a Brett Hull St. Louis jersey. I do not like that little stripe coming up. I don't know what that was, or maybe someone with a pencil just kind of sneezed and made it go up on the jersey or something when they were designing it. I don't like that whatsoever. But I do like the Blues look. Even it got a little bit of that's yellow, right? Is that orange or yellow in there?
It's yellow, but it wasn't the yellow they had used for how they went with like a more of an orangey yellow, but it was still yellow.
I like it. And you got Brett Hull in there, so you can't go wrong with that at all.
I would go with the St. Louis one as well. Not that the Calgary one is not right. I can live with the pencil mistake there in the middle. I mean, it doesn't add anything, but I mean, there's a lot worse jerseys that we've seen here, so that's not the one that's going to get me all hot and bothered. But no, the St. Louis one is nice. St. Louis has a lot of good retro jerseys as well, just in general. So I would pick the St. Louis one. Also, Brett Hull, like who doesn't love him? As on the ice, as he was very good. Also in his retirement, man is just living his best life. So
he played hard on the ice, and he's certainly retiring hard too.
He only knows one speed, and it's 100%. He's not mailing it in. It doesn't matter where.
Now, before I get to my answer, the reason why I love Brett Hull, since that seems to be like the theme here as we close out the show, when he was a younger player, the Canadian team, I forget for what Olympics or what tournament was, did not have room for him. They were that stacked. Team USA comes to him and says, hey, we got a spot for you here. He goes to Team USA. Brett Hull becomes Brett Hull. Next time around, international tournament, Team Canada's like, hey, Brett, we got a spot for you. And Brett goes, hey, no, sorry. You didn't want me last time. America wanted me, and I'm going to stay there. So the fact that he played for Team USA, despite being Canadian, not trying to rub it in, Chris, but to me, that was like, like you grow up wanting to play for your country, and he gets screwed. And then he gets a chance to maybe have that. And he's like, you know what? No, you did me wrong the first time. I'm going to stay with the people who did me right. So good on you, Brett.
I mean, he became a traitor, but that's fine. Like that's okay.
He's your, what? Not Paul Revere. Who was the guy? The American Revolution. Why am I asking the Canadian who shit, I can't think of his name right now. It'll come to me later. But my answer on the jersey, I own.
He's got one.
There you go.
Is it Hull on the back, or is it just a plain?
It's just a plain. I should get Hull on the back. Benedict Arnold. That's who I was trying to think of.
I have no idea who that is, by the way, but thanks.
He was a traitor in the American Revolution. He was kind of like a double spy kind of thing.
Gotcha.
British. Yeah, there you go. It's
It looks even better up close. Like seeing the actual jersey looks better. Put that on big screen. Yeah, put that on big screen. That jersey it looks
Look at
even
that.
better.
yeah, I got that. That was one of the ones you had to get because it was so cool and like it was like it screams 90s, but it actually made sense with the team. The Calgary Flames jersey. My problem with that is the Flames have one of those jerseys where like you got it right the first time with that deep red, and then the flaming sea, like just a couple of like alternating white and yellow stripes on the bottom. That's all you got to do. You didn't have to. You had it perfect. You didn't have to mess with it. Blues. It was cool to see them try something new. So there you go. There's sweater weather for this edition of Total Hockey Now. Got to get used to the T and not the B here on the Total Hockey Now YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook network. But that, I think, does it for our first episode here. Now, we're going to be back with you, like I said, on Friday to discuss the deadline. Don't forget, Anthony, if you're a baseball or a New York Mets fan, he's got all his stuff covered for you over there on the Subway to Shea podcast. You can check that out. Chris also has the Slapshot podcast there, so you can check that out at Slapshot Podcast. And like we said earlier, all of his written content you can check out over at fantasyalarm.com. And tomorrow, Total Hockey Now return today. Rip and Riff with Mr. Jared Moore returning tomorrow at 6 o'clock Eastern, 3 o'clock Pacific time. So happy to have that back up and online as well. And also, don't forget, and I got to get used to doing this and incorporating it. Don't forget to rate, review, subscribe, and all that good stuff.
Thumbs up, too. Thumbs up on this video. Helps us out big time.
Do it for our producers and our executive board.
They need to eat. They need their toys. They drive they work us hard, folks. We don't want to talk too much about it, but they work us hard.
The executive producer came out on the show today. That's how pumped he was for the first episode.
He was pumped for the first episode. Good to be back. And for Anthony and Chris, I'm Adam. Farewell until our next shift here on Total Hockey Now on the THN Network.